Good afternoon. The subcommittee will come to order. This is our second hearing on the VA.gov bugs and the struggles they have created for veterans to access their benefits. I'd like to welcome our witnesses back to the discussion on these issues. The number of veterans affected now exceeds 120,000. To recap, about 32,000 veterans submitted their disability compensation claims through the website. But as our witnesses explained in September, the claims were never established in the system that processes them. This has been happening since 2018. In addition, roughly 81,000 veteran and family members requests to add or remove dependents on VA.gov and its predecessor system were not processed, causing them to be overpaid or underpaid. This has been happening all the way back to 2011. On top of that, other veterans were unable to access the Notice of Disagreement form on VA.gov to appeal denials of their claims. This went on for about 5 weeks before being discovered. I understand that our witnesses have an update on the number of veterans who have encountered that problem. Mistakes are bound to happen, but it is unacceptable that some of these errors persisted for years before anyone discovered them. In the last hearing, I urged our witnesses to be more proactive in contacting the veterans and offering them help, and I would like an update on that. Many of these veterans and survivors depend on their VA benefits for most or all of their income. They need to hear from the VA much more quickly. We all need to be confident that errors in the VA.gov and other systems will never again be allowed to compound undetected and impact so many people. To that end, I will be introducing the VA Watching Over Electronic Benefits Act. The VA now has a watchtower to monitor the website, and this legislation will make sure that it performs as intended. I would like now to turn to another problem that our veterans are facing. In early November, VA informed the committee that it has been overpaying pensions to at least 9,900 veterans because of inaccurate data from the Social Security Administration and a faulty process for veterans to self-report their income. This has been going on since 2011, and it may impact as many as 40,000 veterans. I appreciate our witnesses explaining the situation to the committee staff last week, but there are still quite a few outstanding questions. When did the VA leaders first realize that the data problems were creating pension overpayments? I understand there's a debt collection moratorium, but how has that been communicated to all of the veterans, and how exactly does it work? When are the debts going to be erased? And why has the VA still not determined the status of the other 30,000 veterans who may be affected? These technical issues each affected veterans' benefits in different ways. But in each case, we expect the VA to put aside what is convenient for the bureaucracy and move faster. With that, I will yield to Ranking Member Surplus McCormick for her opening statements.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you so much to our witnesses for being here today and testifying. It's now been 2 months since we met to discuss issues with VA.gov. I look forward to today's conversation and hearing from witnesses how VA is progressing in fixing the problem with the IT systems that allowed veterans to fall through the cracks. Since the hearing in September, we've learned that VA shut down an online form that veterans use to file pensions claims. I've been told that the form had not been updated since 2018 and no longer matched the paper form used by VA today. I have concerns that the form went so long without being updated, and I'm curious what VA is doing to evaluate other electronic forms that may be out of date. I look forward to the conversation today. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you, Ranking Member Surplus McCormick. I will now introduce the Department of Veterans Affairs witnesses on our first and only panel today. First, we have Assistant Secretary for Information and Technology, Kurt Dalbenny. Thank you for coming in again today. We also have Chief Technology Officer Charles Worthington. Again, thank you again for coming in. From the Veterans Benefits Administration, we have Mr. Ray Tellez. Good to see you again. Executive Director of the Office of Business Integration. And joining him is Mr. Paul Shute, the Assistant Deputy Undersecretary for the Office of Automated Benefits Delivery. Thank you again. I ask the witnesses to please stand and raise your right hands. Do you solemnly swear under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you so much, and let the record reflect that all witnesses have answered in the affirmative. Mr. Del Bene, you are now recognized for 5 minutes to deliver your opening statement on behalf of the panel.
Good afternoon, Chairman Rosendale, Ranking Member Sherflitz McCormick, and distinguished members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today about the Department of Veterans Affairs VA.gov website. I'm accompanied today by Mr. Paul Shute, the Assistant Deputy Undersecretary, Office of Automated Benefits Delivery, VBA, Mr. Raymond Tellez, the Executive Director of the Office of Business Integration of VBA, and Mr. Charles Worthington, Chief Technology Officer and Office of Information Technology. VA is committed to providing veterans with a seamless digital experience they've come to expect in their consumer lives, and VA.gov's platform strives to be that digital front door. Each month, nearly 14 million unique veterans and users access VA.gov to learn about, apply for, and manage their VA benefits and health care. As an update to our September hearing, the Department would like to share our progress in recent VA.gov issues. With respect to the disability claims submission errors, as you'll recall, we previously identified approximately 32,000 claims that were not correctly established due to a technical issue. Currently, VA has established 25,257 of those disability claims submitted them, and sent outreach letters to impacted veterans. As of November 28th, 89.4% of the established disability claims were decided. The remaining identified claims will be established in December of this year. With respect to the dependency submission claims errors, VA previously identified 45,903 veterans who filed a request to update their dependency status and did not have it successfully processed. VA completed analysis and identified approximately 81,000 veterans who filed and did not have their dependency submission successfully processed. As of November 28th, VA established 70,406 dependency reviews and has completed 37.5% with a decision notice to veterans. The remaining 10,975 dependency claims are targeted to be established in December. With respect to the PACT Act intent to file issue, with record high claim submissions, the back end of VA.gov system was had an abnormal increase in timeout errors where VA.gov was unable to process a veteran's intent to file. VA resolved this issue in September and contacted all affected veterans that their ITF was received. The department identified 429 ITF submissions needing establishment, and these were processed in September. Finally, with respect to the notice of disagreement issue, in September, VA identified a technical issue on VA.gov by noting a drop of about 900 appeals from the normal VA.gov submission volume. VA investigated the issue and quickly deployed a fix. 3,152 veterans visiting the site may have not been impacted by the inability to load the web page that's part of VA.gov's Notice of Disagreement form. VA will contact the impacted veterans to ensure that they are able to successfully submit their appeal without any impact to their appeal date. To identify any potential issues with VA.gov, VA's Office of Information Technology implemented a Code Yellow process to ensure more accurate monitoring. Code Yellow includes monitoring the health of the most important applications and features of VA.gov and making these monitors accessible in a single place. Additionally, Code Yellow ensures a government employee knows about any significant issues within 24 hours. So far, 80% of VA.gov's most important features are monitored, and VA will complete automatic monitoring of the top features by the end of Q1 of fiscal year 24. Finally, unrelated to previous VA.gov issues, I would like to address the recent notifications concerning the VA.gov Pension Application Interactive Form being temporarily unavailable from November 8th of 2023 to November 31st or January 31st of 2024. Leveraging PACT Act funding, VA is updating the interactive form so it matches the current paper version of the form. Veterans, their families, and accredited representatives are still able to download the current pension application form and submit it using VA Quick Submit on Access VA. Chairman Rosendale, Ranking Member Sherflitz McCormick, and members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. As previously mentioned, VA.gov is the digital front door for veterans, And veterans need to have confidence their benefits and services are available, accurate, and secure. I look forward to working with Subcommittee to address our greatest priorities and challenges that we face in our digital transformation. This concludes my testimony, and I look forward to any questions you may have.
Thanks so much, Mr. Del Benny. The written statement of Mr. Del Benny will be entered into the hearing record. And we will now proceed with questioning. I recognize myself for 5 minutes. I'm going to begin with you, Mr. Tellez. Mr. Tellez, I'd like to return to the 32,000 veterans whose disability compensation claims submitted to VA.gov were not established in the system. Why are you only notifying the veterans as you process their claims? Why have we waited so long to provide them with the ones that have not been notified with the others with any information whatsoever?
Thank you, Congressman, for your question. I believe we are notifying them the time of the claims establishment because that's the time that we are taking an action on their claim. So it not only updates the veteran of the action, but explains why we are taking that action for them.
So why wouldn't we give information to the veterans whose claims haven't been recognized at all and at least let them know that they haven't been recognized? There's a lot of veterans out there that are completely oblivious, okay, to the fact that they haven't even been recognized. Their claim has not even been recognized yet. Why aren't we sending some kind of notification out to all of them?
Thank you, Congressman. I'll take the action back for our communications team to see how we could use social media and other avenues, VSO organizations, to continue to spread that message on that issue.
I mean, because they're walking through thinking they've been brought, recognized into the system. You see where my concern is? And they don't even know that there's a problem.
I do. Thank you, Congressman. And I'd just like to remind folks that if they have a question or concern, they can call VBA's National Call Center, 1-800-827-1000, Monday through Friday, 8 o'clock in the morning, 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Time. If they do have questions, while we continue to socialize some of the challenges that we've had with the VA document issues.
Well, again, ignorance may be bliss, that's a saying, but when you are trying to get a benefit, okay, and apply for it, and you've applied for it, and you don't know that it has not been recognized by the system, then these folks aren't even aware that they have a problem. So as you give an 800 number out there to folks that aren't even aware of the fact that there's a problem, why would they even bother to call? How and when do you intend to notify the remaining veterans and process their claims?
Thank you, Congressman. We have another automated batch process scheduled for this month for the remaining veterans who had submitted claims. So we will notify those remaining veterans this month when we put those claims under control in VBMS.
Okay, and how do you decide what order and process these disability compensation claims is going to be in? Okay, do we have some kind of a priority checklist from veterans that are either impacted by income, or is it by chronological date, or is it by, what matrix are you using to make a determination about when you contact people?
Thank you, Congressman. I'll ask Mr. Shute if he could respond to that, please.
Very good.
So we don't have a prioritized list in terms of income or other demographic factors. What we did is we looked at the population of veterans who were impacted by the 526 application issue on VA.gov. Which claims we could get established most quickly so we can start working those claims, get those veterans a decision to make them whole. As Ray said, we've got about 7,000 veterans left to establish and process their claims, but there is no order prioritization in terms of the factors that you mentioned.
So someone who has a more severe disability and might be more reliant upon that income isn't going to get any kind of preferential treatment to someone who might be just literally subsidizing their lifestyle a bit.
Once the claim is established, we continue to follow the protocols that we have for prioritizing claims for certain populations of veterans, terminally ill, homeless, things of that nature. So once the
I understand once the claim is established. The problem is going out and actually establishing the claims for the people who have tried to. Are you understanding the question I'm asking? Okay, they think that they are already in process. And they are not. And so what I'm trying to do is determine exactly what criteria are you using to get a hold of these people. And if there's not any sense of urgency or priority given to anyone, which it sounds like what you're doing, you're just sort of, as a matter of fact, quite the contrary. You said in your words, that you're trying to utilize the easiest cases possible to process faster?
We are working to establish the claims that we can decide as quickly as possible. Those are the claims that get established first, correct?
Okay, rather than run over, we're going to have a couple of rounds here, so I'm going to go ahead and recognize Representative Sherfless McCormick for 5 minutes for questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Undersecretary Del Bene, it seems that you have been left holding the bag. Many of these IT issues have gone undiscovered for years through multiple administrations and countless CIOs. You just happen to be there, the one in this seat when we have found them, and are left to answer all the hard questions. I thank you for your efforts to get VA's IT system up to the standard that we expect and that veterans deserve. I'd like to spend my time getting some updates on the issues we discussed in September. At our last hearing on VA.gov, we discussed the approximately 45,000 veterans who attempted to update the beneficiaries' information failed. When did the issue first start, and how did we identify it?
Thank you for your question. Actually, I think I would pass that question to Paul, who can answer it more completely.
We first discovered the issue in August 2021. At that time, we found a defect between the interaction between our VA.gov and VBMS systems. At that time, we had delivered a capability to generate a report anytime that issue was encountered, so that our Office of Information Technology team could pass a report basically to VBA so that we could manually establish and work those claims. Now, it wasn't until January of 2023 that we learned from our National Call Center that they were getting an increased volume of calls from veterans who had filed a dependency claim on VA.gov and did not receive a decision. At that point in time, we stood up an integrated project team to really delve in and see if there were other issues that we hadn't accounted for. And that's what led to the population of 45,000 veterans that we reported at the last hearing.
Has the number of veterans identified changed since our last hearing, and what is the status of those veterans, beneficiaries, the status that's changed?
So as part of the review, we've identified any potentially affected veteran, and we've now identified a population of 81,000 veterans who may have been impacted by this issue. Now, we're confident that not all 81,000 are impacted, but we want to conduct a review of each and every one of those claims to make sure that we're able to make those veterans whole.
And when do you expect that all the beneficiary statuses updates will have been completed?
So to date, we've established 70,000 of that 81,000 veteran population, and 45% of them have been completed so far. We're planning to establish the remaining 11,000 claims later this month.
Okay, thank you. Also, during that hearing, we discussed the approximately 32,000 veterans who attempted to file for disability compensation were not correctly established. When did this issue first start, and when did you identify it?
We first identified this issue in November of 2022. At that time, it was impacting around 75,000 claims per week, according to our projections. The issue dated back to 2018. The month. Okay, to clarify, 75 cases per week is what we were anticipating the impact to be. That month, we determined there were around 32,000 veterans that were impacted by this issue, and we began working on a remediation plan.
Has the number of veterans identified changed since our last hearing, and what is the status of those veteran claims?
The number has not changed. To date, we've been able to establish 25,000 of those claims, and 90% of them have been completed. We're planning to establish the remaining 7,000 later this month.
Well, thank you. I yield back.
Thank you very much, Ranking Member Sherfless McCormick. I will now recognize my good friend from Texas, Representative Self.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A lot of process, as normal, we hear in your briefing packets, a lot of process. Who wants to answer this question? What is the financial impact, potential financial impact on the well-being of individual veterans for the disability compensation claims and pension payments errors? Who wants to answer that? What's the potential impact on individual veterans? And then, once we get to individual veterans, what's the estimate? What I'm asking is, what do you think on the number, on each veteran, what's a reasonable guess at how much they owe? And then I want to know what you think the figure is VA-wide. So individual veterans, then VA-wide. What is your liability?
Thank you, Congressman, for your question. In terms of the first part, the financial impact, I think it's TBD because we are still reviewing those claims. One of the things that we are working from is no harm to the veteran. So as we are looking at these claims where there may be a debt created as a result of this system error, those are the things that we can mitigate through our normal claims processing, and we've got rules and authorities to handle that. Even with the pension overpayment that Mr. Congressman Rosendale spoke of earlier, we have authorities in there to address that too, and we're working that internal. I'll have to take your question 2 and 3 back because I don't know that we know that enough information to be able to answer it here.
Let me give you just back of the envelope figures, okay? And there are some variables here. But if we use a pension amount of $2,000, overpayment amount, 10%, 5%, and you work with those figures, you're talking about, depending on whether you're talking about the 10,000 veterans or you're talking about the 40,000 veterans, and I've got it, potentially hundreds of millions of dollars that veterans owe the VA. Is that reasonable?
Congressman, I'm not prepared to address that. We were not prepared to answer the questions on payment. They were not the invite letter, but would happy to take that question back for you and get you a response or a briefing for you and your staff.
Well, I suspect that you need to know that answer because this is a direct liability that the veterans have to the VA. And when you're addressing how you're going to handle it, my second question is, I still see that you haven't contacted some of the veterans, depending on the issue here. This is serious business for the individual veterans, and I want to know why you haven't contacted every single veteran. This is, I think you're using code yellow. Why is this not a code red? Because this directly impacts our veterans. Do you even have a code red?
Actually, I would say with that in respect in particular, if a system is down, that's probably the closest thing to a code red, and our goal is to get that system back up as soon as possible. I triage with the rest of our team every single issue that happens in the entire VA infrastructure every day at 8 a.m. And we actually measure our time to recovery on our major systems each and every month. We do a monthly operations review to make sure that anything that you would probably consider a code red gets addressed super quickly.
But I'm not really interested in the code red. I'm talking about the veterans. I'm more interested in the individual veterans being contacted that they have a problem.
So I'll pass it to Paul and to Ray in a moment, but I think the one thing that is the guiding principle is the minute that once we've established for a group that's similar in an issue like this, that there is a claim that appears to be valid, we establish those as quickly as we can, and once we've established them, we communicate to that veteran. And so this whole notion that a veteran would go not knowing whether they have a claim outstanding or not, I don't think that's usually the case. The moment that we know that there's a class of folks that we should communicate to, we always strive to communicate to them as quickly as we can.
Okay, you use the term as quickly as possible. What is the standard for quickly as possible?
I think it's probably situation dependent, but let me pass to Ray or to Paul. Do you have any thoughts there?
Because I have a standard in my office. When somebody contacts us, I have a standard by which we answer.
Sure.
What is your standard once you've identified, because I assume you're identifying new errors all the time. What is your standard for contacting the veteran? I don't want to talk process. I want to talk how you're treating our veterans. What is the standard for as quickly as possible? There's got to be a standard here, folks. There's got to be a function.
I think the standard that we're all working towards now is immediate notification of not only the affected veterans, but in key stakeholders and partners like yourself in the VSO community.
I'd like to know what the objective standard is, and Mr. Chairman, I'm out of time. I yield back.
Thank you very much. And quite frankly, we have just heard from you and two contradictory statements, Mr. Del Benny, that you want to have immediate notification. As soon as you find that there's a problem, that you want to make sure that the veterans are notified. And we know, and you know, of information for a year's time now where they have not had their information recognized by the Veterans Administration because of failures within the software programs, and you have not notified them. So how in the world are you going to sit there and say that immediate notification when you've got thousands of veterans who have applied for benefits and have not been notified that their form, that their application has not even been recognized by the VA yet? That is not immediate in anybody's book. Mr. Worthington, let's talk about the notice of disagreement issue, and not the one that I have with you right now. We have heard several different numbers of veterans impacted who may or may not have been able to appeal denials of their claims. Now you're telling us it was 3,152. Do you know who these veterans are, and have you determined whether they were able to file notice of disagreement using a different method?
Thank you for the question. The notice of disagreement bug impacted the ability of, we believe, 3,100 veterans to load the form. And we don't know for sure if the veteran would have intended to submit the form or not. This would have appeared to them as just an error loading the web page. We do have a record, however, of who those individual veterans are, and I believe the board is planning to reach out to those veterans to ensure that they have been able to apply for an appeal if in fact that was their intention, and if so, to be able to maintain the effective date of the appeal dating back to that error.
When did you discover the problem?
I believe that this was discovered in August of this year and fixed a few days after that.
Okay, and so we have still trying to notify these veterans. Mr. Shute, is that immediately? August? They found out, they discovered in August. Would you call that immediate notification of those veterans? Here it is, December what is today? The 4th. That's not immediate in my book, okay? Mr. Worthington, when are you going to contact the veterans who haven't filed a notice of disagreement that you've identified that tried to?
I would have to get back to you with the specific plans. I believe the board and OIT are working on that for early next year.
Mr. Del Benny, I would like to quickly turn to the 56,000 dependent changes that were not processed. I understand this number has risen now to 81,000. How many of these requests have you processed now, and how many of these veterans or dependents have already passed away before the requests were even processed?
If I may, I think Mr. Schute's probably the best person to answer that question. It's in his domain.
So of the 70,000 claims that we've established to date, we've completed 45% of those. In terms of the result of the claim decisions, we don't have that information available today, but I'd be more than happy to provide that to you in the committee.
What I'm trying to discover is, obviously, when the claimant has passed away while they were in process, not only did they not get the benefit of this, but it certainly complicates the beneficiary thereafter of any benefit that they're going to serve as well. So the long and short of it is, where's my calculator? So we've got 31,500 of the 81,000 that have been processed. That's about what I've got. You've got 70,000 of the 81,000, and you've got 45% of the 70,000. So 31,500 have been processed. That's a fancy way of saying 31,500. So we've still got a lot of people, again, out there that have not been processed, notified. Mr. Worthington, I have some questions about VA.gov Watchtower. If I understand correctly, it focuses on monitoring transaction volumes to detect the anomalies. Spikes volume, or valleys in the volume. Why not focus on detecting the processing errors themselves?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it does include both volume, but also error rates and other key factors that would indicate the health of a specific feature. So the intention would be to summarize what you're describing.
Yeah, well, everyone continues to speak about, again, the anomalies and the peaks and valleys in activity, and that's what you're using as the flag, if you will, to identify that maybe something is going wrong. Does the software, are you telling me the software does have the ability to identify when there is a problem in the information that is either being received or delivered?
Yes, we're additionally looking at error rates in the transactions. So volume would be one indicator, but also error rates and things like latency, how long did the request take, are other factors that are going into the watchtower.
Okay, I'm going to yield to Ranking Member Surplus McCormick for additional questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My next question is for Mr. Del Bene, or anyone of the witnesses who can answer it. We saw an article from a Florida man, a veteran actually, who received a notification that he was in debt to the VA for more than $100,000 related to the issues with the income verification. Naturally, that created a lot of anxiety with our veterans, wondering if they too owe money and if they would be in that situation. So I wanted to talk to some of the assurances that we may provide for some of our vets who are in this situation or maybe later on. Related to the pension program issue, I understand that the VA intends to use all of its authorities available to forgive any debts occurred by veterans. Is that correct?
Let me pass that one to Mr. Shute, who's the domain expert there.
That is correct. We are looking to exercise the authorities available to us under the Cleland-Dole Act, which would allow us to prevent debt from occurring in those situations. While we're working to codify that into regulation, we have some draft policies in place that are being reviewed by the Secretary right now, and those decisions should be coming out soon.
And just to clarify, could you expand on that for some of our veterans who might be watching and who might be anxious? Because a lot of the veterans in my district became anxious. I want to make sure that it's clear for them that we have a reassurance.
Yes, so the Cleland-Dole Act, I believe in Section 252, ensures or prohibits VA from creating a debt for veterans when it's an action that's due on part of the VA and in delay in the processing time. That's really the authority that we're using in this situation to not only put those debts on hold while we put that interim policy in place, but to ensure that no future debts are a result of issues like this.
And for further clarification, is there a population of veterans that you don't have sufficient authority to forgive?
Not that I'm aware of. However, due to the complexity of some of the policy components, I would love to work with you and your staff and make sure that we bring some policy experts from our team who can speak to this topic more intelligently than I can.
And also, I wanted to ask, because some people are wondering, how does this even occur? So how have these veterans acquired such large debts?
So I think to start, it's helpful to understand the program that we're talking about here. So the Veteran Pension Program provides monthly benefits to veterans based on factors like age and disability, and also income and net worth. Veterans are asked to self-report the income and net worth as part of their application process and as part of an annual validation. We had computer matching agreements with the Social Security Administration to be able to validate that the self-reported income was correct, and the computer matching that was in place in 2011 was sending data that we couldn't effectively rely on. That's when we moved away from using that computer match and relied exclusively on the self-reported data. Those issues have now been resolved with the computer matching program, but for veterans who had self-reported income that was different than the computer match between that period of time, 2011 till the present time, a debt could have occurred in those instances.
So the issue first started in 2011, is that correct?
That's correct.
So if a vet, if a vet received a debt letter, how should they follow up?
Right now, we put all the debt notification and debt collections on hold while we work to exercise the authorities available to us under the Cleland-Dole Act.
Thank you. I yield back, Mr.
Thank you, Ranking Member Surplus McCormick. I now recognize Ranking Member, Representative Self from Texas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you think that Watchtower is quality control?
Yes, I would say that we are designing it so that we have more confidence in the specific health of any given feature at any given time, because VA.gov is such an expansive product with so many aspects. This would give us a way to know more proactively if there's an issue happening impacting one of those features.
Now, I disagree with you because what you said is you're monitoring the health of your functions. That's what I disagree with, because everything we hear, again, is process here. I hear very little about the veterans. I'm talking about the quality of control that should be exercised in the determinations. And we've had other briefings about the appeals board and all of that. But this is my problem. I disagree that Watchtower is QC on the issues that we're addressing today. Why can, we're talking about excess VA here, why can the live forms not keep up with the paper forms? It looks to me like it would be harder to get a new paper form approved than it would be to recode a live form on VA.gov as opposed to Access VA. Why can they not keep up? Why do you have to take that function down and have people use Access VA? Can anyone answer that?
If I may, the first thing I'd like to address is I think the difference between what Mr. Worthington, where his head was at, and your point around QC is it's a portion of QC. It is a full process from ingestion all the way to processing of those appeals. Mm-hmm. I think Watchtower is QC in that front end. The other thing that wasn't mentioned, which I think is really important, is we've changed the error handling so that everything that doesn't get processed by the actual software goes into the inbound mail for people to process manually. So I think that is that quality control that makes sure everything gets processed. But then there's a separate discussion about whether the handling of the application once it's actually been submitted is quality controlled, and we can have a discussion about that too. So I just wanted to make a distinction there. In terms of the forms, every time there's a form that's changed, the computer version of it gets onto a feature list that gets prioritized by us and by the VBA to decide what features will be implemented in what order. And I think that is a very back and forth process. Lots of debate goes on of what's more important, adding more capability to VA.gov so that more people can apply online versus changing the particular form. I think in this particular case, VBA had found a way around it so that they could actually still process these forms by reaching out to the veteran, and that weighs into that kind of prioritization scheme.
Okay, I won't pursue that, but let's talk about your authorities. When you talk about pensions, typically these are low-income and elderly veterans, correct? So as I read the authority to delay collection, when I read the authority, the secretary can delay for likely to, if it is likely to cause repayment of such overpayment makes it more difficult for the individual. Likely to cause an unpaid debt to be referred to the Treasury offset program are not in the best interest of the individual. I think that could cover almost everyone in this program because we're talking about low income and elderly veterans. Is that a fair statement? And the follow-on question I'll give you before you answer, do you simply delay or do you do any expungement?
Let me pass that one to Mr. Shute to respond.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm only able to speak to the technical components of that. Again, some of our policy experts who understand the nuances of that law, I'd love to take some of those questions back and make sure we can get you a thorough response.
Okay, do you do expungement?
I'm not aware of any policies related to expungement.
So we've got potentially hundreds of millions of dollars that the veterans of this nation owe the VA. Many of them don't know it, and you can delay it but not expunge it. That's something we probably ought to make clear to our veterans. If you've gotten one of these letters, or if you're going to get one of these letters, I think we need to make that clear to our veterans. With that, I yield back.
Thank you very much. Mr. Worthington, I'm going to get back to the Watchtower process. Do you think it would be unreasonable expectation to prevent the errors in the situations that we've been discussing?
No, I think that is exactly our goal, is to reduce the chance of errors like this happening, and certainly not for as long as they happened in this case. We view that as unacceptable, and this program, I think, will give us more confidence that that's not occurring as we try to get all of the features monitored.
Okay. If Watchtower currently covers about 80% of the VA.gov's most commonly used features, what are the other features that are not covered?
Well, we're working our way down the list. As Mr. Dabani mentioned, we're planning to get to 100% of those Tier 1 features by the end of this year, by the end of December. But we want to get all of the features on VA.gov similarly monitored. I think that will be a work in progress as we continue through the year.
How can we be sure that the veteran submissions to those parts of the website are not being lost or delayed?
I think we want to look exactly into that question now that we have the pattern of these initial errors. We're going to be looking at all of the different types to ensure that we, if we see any similar issues, we can fix them as well.
So again, how can we be sure now, Mr. Dabani, that information isn't being lost or delayed if it's not being monitored by Watchtower?
I think the important thing is the error handling, if something doesn't get caught, is changed, so that it always goes into the inbox for somebody to humanly process. So that says, one, we want to monitor how it's doing, but two, we have a fail-safe that goes in for manual processing.
So is that happening now?
We are putting that error handling in place, yes, and have for at least 80% of the case.
So it is happening now. You say you're putting it in place.
Well, it is part of this process of putting the Watchtower in place and get the error handling correct.
Okay, Mr. Del Bene, do you intend to wrap up your Code Yellow special focus on fixing VA.gov in the next 2 weeks?
I believe that is our goal, is to complete our Code Yellow in the next 2 weeks. Before we would exit the Code Yellow, we would have had to achieve the goal of getting 100% of those features fully monitored, and so we will only exit the Code Yellow if that's true, but our plan is to do so.
Do you believe that is possible, that this is physically possible? Because we're going to be coming back again and bringing these questions up, so.
Yes, I currently believe we can finish our stated goal of the exit of the Code Yellow for those Tier 1 features by the end of this year.
I think it's important also, if I may just very quickly, the importance of Code Yellow is we don't actually exit the Code Yellow until the exit criteria are met, which means we'll be in the state, and the time frame is as Charles said, but.
Sure, and I'm more concerned about the work being done than what color you call it, okay?
Fair enough.
I just want the work to be done, and I want you to be truthful when you're here before us, that this is realistically how long it's going to take us to accomplish that. I would rather have a little bit of bad news right now, knowing that it's going to take a little bit longer, and have it be accurate, than have you blowing smoke up the rear end of a horse, okay, right now, telling us bad information.
Understood.
That's basically what I'm getting at.
And I do want to be clear that we're focusing on those most used features. We still also want to cover all of the features of the website, and as we expand the Watchtower to include all the features, we may find other things. That would be the hope, is that we do find them so we can fix them.
So, Mr. Del Bene, I want to turn to the pension application form that was disabled on VA.gov. How long did it go without being updated to reflect the changes to the paper form?
I believe the current version of the paper form was implemented in 2018. For at least a year thereafter, there would have been a policy to allow the old form as well. And so for at least a year past that, so you can say within around 2019, it would have still been accepted. But from that point forward, it would have, when an agent received it and started processing it, they would have to reach out to the veteran to get that additional information. It's important to stress that at least half of the times when an agent receives one of these pension forms, they actually have to go back to the veteran to get more information. And this became one of those cases. And I don't want to speak for the VBA folks, they can do that as well, but they became adept at having the exact information they need, reaching out to the veterans to bring that back in to continue the processing.
Okay, I guess really the thing that I'm getting at is to make sure, why is it that we are putting a different application form online, okay, electronically, and possibly issuing a paper form that does not reflect the same request. And if a veteran has in their possession an old form, that's one thing. But we absolutely should not have a paper form reflective of different requests than the electronic form through the agency.
I agree. I think this was a case, as I try to explain, that the prioritization was such that this didn't rise to the top of the list. When we saw it in the summer, we said, this is causing more difficulty for veterans, we should fix it now. And that's why we chose to pull it down and to actually use PACT Act funding, which we're appreciative of, to be able to revamp the form.
Thank you. I recognize Ranking Member Sheriff McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is for Mr. Schultz. One of the things that we hope to happen in any implementation of an IT solution is that you could prevent any problems, which usually happens after you recognize it, mitigate the situation, which I think freezing it so far is a mitigation attempt, but also correcting that issue. And as I mentioned, I really wanted to make our veterans kind of relieve some of that anxiety. So earlier you indicated that the VA froze all the debt generation and collection for the vets who already received a letter. How can they contact the VA to find out the status of their debt?
So all veterans can reach out to us through the National Call Center. The call center agents are equipped with talking points and additional guidance that can help them navigate any questions related to debt.
Thank you. And then I guess my last comment and question that I would want from you is like a reassurance. Usually we try to be, especially on this committee, be bipartisan because our concern is the veterans. And I think the reassurance that we're going to do everything we can to make sure that our veterans are not suffering a negative economic impact due to mistakes to implementing our IT system is really what we're trying to draw out of here, that we'll do everything in our power to make sure they do not have a negative impact. Could you guys assure us that we're on the same page, that we could do that for our veterans?
We can definitely assure you of that. You have my word that we, in putting the veteran at the center of everything that we do, are going to make sure that not only we make every single veteran whole who is affected by this issue, but any debts that were created as a result of any of these issues will not be incurred for those veterans.
Thank you so much. I yield back.
Recognize Representative Self.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I know the answers to this, but I want to make clear to any veterans that might be watching this. I think I have this right. Prior to June 2022, a 90-year-old veteran who collects a VA pension, this is for you, Mr. Tellez, is responsible for updating VA on his Social Security income every year. And if his Social Security payment went up and he did not report it, he would automatically have a debt with the VA. Now, first of all, is that correct?
Thank you for your question, Congressman. I'm going to have to take that back to our policy folks. I don't want to misspeak on that issue.
Okay, then my follow-up question is, does the annual COLA make up additional income? Is that what you're counting as additional income? Not a different adjudicated Social Security claim, simply the yearly COLA.
Congressman, I will have to take that back to our policy folks and provide you an answer to that, which we're happy to do.
I would love to see that answer because, I mean, this goes to the nuts and bolts of what we're discussing here. What exactly is a COLA increase? Is it the yearly COLA or is it or income increase? Is it the yearly COLA or is it simply a change in the claim for some reason? It's vitally important. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you very much, Representative. Mr. Shute, we've been talking about the veterans' pensions and exactly what is going to happen and the process therein. First of all, what exactly was wrong with the Social Security computer matching agreement, and what exactly did they fix so that you can rely upon it today?
From my understanding, the information that was provided as part of that computer match wasn't providing accurate income data from the Social Security Administration. The teams have been working on that. That has since been corrected, but that was the issue.
Okay, so just for clarification purposes, when Ranking Member Shurfulis McCormick was asking about all of this, you made reference to the self-reporting requirements of the veterans and how that was working. I think it should be made pretty clear here, very clear here, that the problem wasn't with the self-reporting of the veterans. The problem was with the reporting that the Social Security Administration was doing with VA.
The only part that I would like to clarify there is when we identified the discrepancies in the computer match, we stopped using it entirely. Once those issues were corrected and we could rely upon the data coming back from the Social Security Administration, that's when the comparison of the self-reported data to the computer match was effectuated, which did result in those debts. So it wasn't until we could accurately rely upon that information that that match occurred.
I understand that, but again, I want to make sure that we're clear here that this was not a deficiency by the veterans themselves and their reporting. It was a problem with the software or the reporting that the Social Security Administration was doing with the Veterans Administration.
I agree. We take full responsibility for the issues with that computer match, and that's why we're taking the actions that we're taking right now to...
Okay. Again, I just wanted to clarify that because as the conversation was taking place, it sounded like a lot of the weight of this was being blamed upon the veterans themselves for some kind of inaccuracies in self-reporting, and I wanted to make sure that that was not. Mr. Shute, exactly what needs to happen in order for the Secretary to McDonough to erase these debts?
So the Cleveland-Dole Act provided us some authorities that we are working to codify into regulation. As we're working to do that, we want to develop this interim policy that will allow us to basically take action before those authorities are codified into regulation. In terms of the specific parameters of how we apply that policy, I would like to be able to work with your staff and you in particular to provide some more detailed information, as I can speak to the technological components of that, but not the policy details themselves.
Okay, I would like to also see us work together to get a statement out there so that the veterans who receive these pension payments, that we can remove this cloud of anxiety that may be hanging above them, where they may or may not know if they are obligated. That is a very, very bad position to place them in, and I would like to have language out there that clarifies that. Mr. Del Bene, we just received less than an hour ago a response to Chairman Boss' September the 6th letter to Secretary McDonough requesting explanations of the VA.gov problems. It took 2 hearings by this subcommittee to shake this response loose, and that is absolutely unacceptable. I want to ask you about one statement in the letter. It says that the VA Chief Information Officer, that's you, brought on a new senior executive who directly reports to you and will ensure issues related to mishandled claims and veterans unable to access a benefit application are rapidly fixed. The letter makes direct response to that, okay? Who is the new senior executive? Is he or she here today? And if not, why?
Well, thank you for the question. I actually hold myself responsible for making sure that we make any fixes. I'm not sure. I'll have to go back on the reference to the actual executive we're speaking of.
I've got a quote here right from the letter from Secretary McDonough. And it says, recently VA's Chief Information Officer, CIO, brought on a new senior executive who directly reports to him and will ensure issues related to mishandled claims and veterans unable to access a benefit application page are rapidly fixed.
Let me get back to you on that one.
You don't know who your new senior executive is?
I know all of my senior executives. I'm trying to make sure that I give you the correct information in terms of who we're referencing there.
We will look for that by the end of day today, okay? Not by next week. If you've got a senior executive that the Secretary of Veterans Affairs is saying that is responsible for something, and that you hired them, we need to know about that.
Fair enough.
You certainly should know about
We'll
that.
get back to you today on that.
I defer to Ranking Member Sherfless McCormick.
I yield my time.
Do you have any closing remarks? I'm sorry, Representative Sherfless
I do.
McCormick.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, Chairman Rosendale. I appreciate the testimony and answers from all our witnesses this afternoon. I recognize that no IT solution is perfect, and they are constantly evolving and changing, and that evolution introduces risk. VA has a lot of work to do to resolve these IT issues and to make sure the fallout is managed for the veterans' impact. Specifically, that veterans do not suffer any negative impacts. We will continue to monitor the situation until it is resolved. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you very much, Representative Sherfless McCormick. I want to thank our witnesses for returning this afternoon to update the committee and the public on these issues that are so important for veterans and their livelihoods all around the country. Please remember, these hearings are not just for the people in this room. Tens of thousands of people are watching on the internet and on C-SPAN. Veterans expect that whenever the VA gives them a piece of technology to use, it's going to work. It is supposed to improve their lives. And when it doesn't work, veterans and their family members should be confident that the VA will take responsibility for the consequences. I appreciate our witnesses explaining what they have done and plan to do to make these benefits right. But I still question why no action was taken for 5 years, for 10 years, or even 12 years after the technical glitches began. I hope no more shoes will drop and there will be no more need for another hearing. But as I said in September, regardless of what happens, our focus on making the veterans whole will continue. They can't be left waiting and wondering until the VA gets around to helping them. With that, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material. Without objection, so order, the hearing is adjourned.